Hi everybody, welcome back to another CYT-Crypto episode. This is a special edition where I get to sit down and talk with Ben Jorgensen from Constellation. And this was a really fascinating, we had a conversation last week just about Constellation, kind of crypto, just about everything. And we got on really well. It was just a cool conversation. And he was talking about community and how important that was to him. And I thought we could do an interview just around community because a lot of projects don't get just how important community is. And how big they could make the project as well. So I thought we'd get together, and Ben agreed that we could talk about community as well. That'd be a good aspect to talk about. So this is the resulting interview. There was a few internet connection problems, but I managed to kind of edit it out, and hopefully it looks okay for you as well. So I hope you enjoy this video with Ben Jorgensen. I think it really kind of gets down to the core of who Ben is, who the team is as well, Constellation, the team, and kind of what they're up to and how they put community at its core as well. I think is really important. I think this is a really cool interview, so I hope you enjoy it. Ben, thank you very much for joining me again. I know we had a discussion last week and it was great meeting you, so thank you very much for joining me today. I know you're really, really busy just now.
Thanks, Stephen. It's really great to be here, and I just had such a fun time talking with you last week. I think this is going to be great.
Yeah, it was quite cool. But one of the things we did, because we're talking about lots of different things, we're talking about Constellation, we're talking about kind of everything, kind of crypto as well. But one of the things you spoke about, which I thought was really interesting, was the way you kind of nurture your community. And I thought that was really interesting because a lot of projects don't do this, and the community is kind of an afterthought, but you put community first and foremost before anything else. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what community means to you in terms of your kind of business and in general?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think, I've talked with a lot of CEOs from other crypto-related projects, and they don't really know how to treat their community right. And I think there was a pattern that people tried to replicate in like 2017 and 2018, which was like hire all these kind of admins around the globe and have them kind of auto feed answers. And, this is something, this channel is really there to market certain things.
Yep.
And so there wasn't a relationship to communities and from what I saw in 2017 and 2018. And it was more of just like an echo chamber. Hey, say this, and it's our one distribution channel. And I don't think that was the right approach. And so the way that I look at it is it was more of a dynamic feedback loop. These were real people. They were eager to know. And the culture and the kind of stigma of community was something more around like Discord. Discord is basically it's a chat application that was a completely different company before Discord. It was actually a failing like chat app for gaming, and it wasn't doing very well. And they pivoted into Discord, where they used it as like a way to Q&A games console games before they actually came out.
Oh, right.
And so it's pretty interesting. So a lot of early venture investors were involved in Discord under a completely different name and saw this community come out where you could actually like Q&A a console game before it actually deployed and got out into the stores. And it helped kind of modify the game. And what you saw is people that were really avid gamers got involved and could actually create a piece of their game and see their influence.
Wow.
And all of this is kind of reminiscent of early open source communities. One particular that I always like to talk about is Ruby on Rails. The standard came out, the programming standard came out in the early 2000s, where there were about 3 or 4 other standards coming out at the same time in parallel. And what you had is the Ruby on Rails community they were so excited and so hungry to make it happen that they were deploying updates, fixing bugs and gaps and holes that exist. And the reason Ruby on Rails 1 was because of their community, and their sentiment and ethos was just so strong. And so when you look at crypto, you see people wanting to learn technology. They want to get close to their investments they make, and they want to be a part of something, right? And I think when we were talking about, the appetite for crypto is not just this echo chamber. It's ironically an organism that is digital, that works remote, that has access to an abundance of information on the web. And yet the communities are coming together because they want to be connected. They want to relate. They want a relationship, the core of relating, which is fascinating to see that, yes, we're so digitally oriented, but you come in this because we want to connect with people. We want to relate. And if you treat that as just like an echo chamber or distribution channel for your marketing ideas, you miss so much of the value that comes from all these people that come together that want to help create something great.
And that's what you've done in your community, particularly your Telegram kind of community as well. When I've joined a lot of communities in Telegram, there's a lot of people that are there to put people down, and it's just crap talking. It's just a nightmare when you go in. You just kind of unjoin straight away. But what I noticed when I joined Constellation's community is there's loads of people there just kind of willing to help. If you've got a question, they can help you. They'll give you kind of resources and kind of links to resources and stuff like that as well. But the team are in there as well, helping, which is great, which is fantastic. But there's a lot of people who seem to be followers without getting paid, which is amazing. They're not getting paid for it, but still they love Constellation as a project. They love it as a concept of what it's doing as well. And they love it that much that they're willing to do kind of loads of different things for free. And I noticed that in your community. Now, you kind of mentioned last week as well, you've kind of got a structure for, you find these people just organically, but you kind of bring them on board in a kind of structural way without there being a kind of a written set of rules or anything. Could you talk a wee bit about that?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. If I were to take a step back briefly, is that when our community, like I love that you love the sentiment of the community today. The way the community started, they absolutely hated us.
Wow.
And we had 19 admins across the world that didn't know our technology. It was just kind of like, was this the playbook that you were supposed to go down? And I made a mandate across the company that nobody was to talk to the community. And people were like, oh, everybody's going to think you scammed everybody. And I was like, I don't care. We're acting like we're a 10-year-old company that understands who we are. And really, we're 3 months old and we don't know anything about who we are. We wrote Wyatt wrote an amazing white paper. We helped disseminate and create the idea and form a team, but we didn't know who we were. We didn't understand our identity. And so how could you possibly manage, tens of thousands of people, or not even manage, tell them what you're doing and get them to get excited about you if you don't even know who you are? I mean, God, most of us, throughout our 20s are still figuring out who we are. Yeah. And then most of us throughout our entire life are trying to figure out who, but like when you get more confidence, it's through more experience, right? And you're like, oh, I now know the community I want to be a part of in San Francisco. And so one of the things that we focused on was figuring out who we are. What is our story? So that we could inspire other people. And if it was a good story and our technology made sense and we understood how our technology was to be used, then I believe that we could get people to truly adopt what we are doing.
Yeah.
And I'm not even talking about like building on our technology. That's like down the road. This is about seeing if people understand what you're saying. And when you treat, we started treating the community as a living organism, right? And it was our feedback loop as well. Does our message make sense? If If you just talk into an echo chamber, you just hear your own voice, and that doesn't help you provide any like guidance on who you are as a company, where to go. And so that identity formation came out of 2018, and then around 2019, about this time last year, I was like, okay, now is the time to start talking. Let's refigure our strategy. Get rid of all these admins that don't understand a thing about our technology and start recruiting from within. And this was a super powerful thing because now I could listen. You know, I knew my identity. I could listen. I could actually hear what somebody was telling me, if it was good input or not. And so one individual in our team that really came forward, or in our community, which I call my team, is an individual's handle named CryptoFo. And he started telling me things that I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And I was like, God, he's got some merit behind what he's saying. This is really fascinating. And so as I reflected, I took some of his feedback and I started implementing the ideas so he could see that I could listen.
Yeah.
And I could take feedback and guidance. And so that started to create this trust. And I started sharing insights of our strategy and path forward and our passion. And he was like, oh my gosh, you need to bring that to the forefront. And so he started getting trust from us as I started sharing more of the inner workings of Constellation and why this mattered, to where it created a dynamic that we started opening up, we started removing the curtain even further with other individuals from the community.
And that's how I as somebody like that as well, Berserker, his handle is Berserker, he not onboarded me, but he kind of welcomed me into the group, and he kind of PM'd me, and he said, he kind of looked at what I was doing. I'd kind of done a video for Constellation as well. Said, can we hook up with Ben? He said, yeah, we can try and get it sorted. And he was brilliant as well. And I thought these were kind of people that were paid by your company. I thought, well, these guys have to be paid. They're so good at kind of what they're doing, but they're just people who have a deep loyalty to kind of Constellation because they believe in what you're doing.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, I agree. I mean, like having a paid, look, people are not paid to be a part of something that inspires them and they want to see impact the world. I do think a lot of our community holds our cryptocurrency. I think that's the idea, and it's like a token or a piece of something. It literally is a token, but it's a everything. Like you still need to incite inspiration and give people direction. And so, yeah, we have this, one of our advisors, Reihito Hatoyama, who is the former CEO of Hello Kitty, exercised this thing called open innovation. And he helped kind of groom this idea that he implemented at Hello Kitty, where Hello Kitty was like negative $300 million in debt when he became CEO. And over the course of like 6 years, he turned it into a $6 billion line of revenue for the company. And the thing that he did was exercise open innovation, meaning he wanted to create new business models around licensing that would give local communities and designers across the globe the ability to create a Hello Kitty logo merchandise that met the needs of their own location. And how could a group in Japan and the UK understand what all the different locales in the US wanted in terms of Hello Kitty?
Yeah.
And so he immediately tapped with this model. He was able to tap into the thousands of designers and brand marketers out there to do what they wanted to do with Hello Kitty. And that's something that we tried to take into Constellation, which is how do we empower individuals to help us? And so there's always a value exchange in this, and where people aren't getting paid, they feel like they are, just like the Discord example, they feel like they're part, they can impact the outcome of this. If, Berserker can help create a better video that articulates Constellation, he can get more people like his friends on board. Or if Headroom can come in and design our pitch deck or Vito with our wallet and put their stamp and skill set on it, and then see this thing take off, they know that they have a foundational plant in this technology. And I think that more like, are they making an impact for the world? And I say that because a lot of what Constellation is doing is very difficult to understand. You know,
Yeah.
I define ourselves as like cybersecurity for big data. Generals and lieutenant colonels and the intelligence community on what we're doing, and why it matters. And that's a very tough conversation. And those are people that deal with that every day of their life. And so where the community comes is that feedback loop, right? If I can empower you with knowledge about where data is going and make everybody junior data scientists in this world and understand data, like how much is that going to elevate you in your personal life, in your work life? When you talk to people, it raises your conversation. And so for us, it's like, oh, what is it that I'm not articulating correctly? And the community is that kind of like that metric on understanding if our message is being heard.
Yeah.
If and getting people to understand that is a very tough thing. And our community tells us what they don't understand. And so I realized something that's like, okay, a lot of this needs to be pieced out. We need to like give little nuggets of information for people to kind of like digest, internalize, and then go, oh my God, that's crazy. I didn't know that. And we're like, oh man. So the value, like while we're not paying people, there is a knowledge value exchange that is made, that I've seen it personally make like people to be not just avid followers of Constellation because it's exciting, but like they truly understand where our minds are going now, where I can jump on an admin call and they're like, yep, we got it. We know what to do. This is how it's going to make an impact. And this is the message that we should be saying. That's decentralization, man. Like that's not me like ordering anybody to do anything. These people are becoming radically self-reliant. I'm just feeding them information that they tell me the best way to piece it together. You know, I've got my whole objectives. And so it's a very fascinating experiment, like a social experiment around relating to people. And people want to learn. People want to have more knowledge, and they want to see that they can apply their skill set to certain things like Constellation.
And that's the thing as well, when we were talking as well, I was going to ask you the question, do you see yourself as a mentor? But I guess it's a two-way thing as well. You're a mentor as well as, because you're learning. A mentor does not know everything, but at the same time, you can still be a mentor to this big group that you're kind of leading just now. How do you see your role just now? I guess not just as a mentor then from what you've been saying.
Yeah, I think that we all have different strengths and we all have different weaknesses. And if you can acknowledge your strengths and weaknesses, you can fill the gaps that exist. And so and to me, like a mentor-mentee relationship is a power dynamic.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always, like you said, it doesn't always invite the free flow of information, right? If I'm mentoring, then I'm lecturing, and sometimes you need that in your life, right? But in any sort of mentor-mentee relationship, it has to be dynamic, right? Because we're not perfect individuals. So I don't see myself as a mentor. I see myself as an individual that has some information that's insatiable for more information. And those that want information, I want to like bestow that on them. And so it is a dynamic relationship, because I don't want that power dynamic there. I don't want that. And I see, and to your point, I think some of these, some crypto projects treat it as like, oh, it's just a bunch of crazy people yelling and angry at stuff. And you know, I'll tell them what I need to, like very much like this, like bravado power control to me that is like, that's authoritarian in its nature, and nobody signed up for that. So wouldn't you suspect that a community would be super angry if they were treated like some minion, and not important? The fascinating thing, when you like real life, when you treat people with respect and you listen to them and you find ways to extract their gifts and talents to be seen in the world, people are so appreciative of that. And this transcends more than just my community. This is my ethos and intention and everything I do. Right? Like I have a restaurant in San Francisco. It's an upscale restaurant. We've gotten press in the Wall Street Journal and write-ups all the time. And my initiative with that is not that I'm a foodie. It's that I met a creative chef that was working at a restaurant, and he had a set of talents and gifts that just needed to be articulated and expressed outwardly. And we got together and we worked to extract that story and see those talents in the real world. And it's like, thank God we did. And we brought a very unique gift to the world. And the same thing I did with Wyatt, and I have that relationship as well. Wyatt, my co-founder, is that he has such a brilliant, fascinating mind, that how do you extract those gifts so that story can be told? Same with everybody in the community. And as such, when you take that humility and you eat humbleness every day, people come to the forefront. I mean, I was sitting there the other day, like talking about how I see Constellation being on consumer packaged goods in our play. Yeah. And somebody DM'd me. I went through like a giant rant on a Friday where I was having a glass of wine. And I was just having fun, but I truly believe it. And I listened to people, and I got a DM from somebody, the head of marketing for a major consumer packaged good brand, saying, I like what you're saying. How can I work with you? And like, had I just taken an approach where I'm like, this is everything, listen to me, listen to what I say, or just give you little bits of information. You don't have the full license to kind of pull it back to Hello Kitty. You don't have the full license to do whatever you want with the Hello Kitty brand. So I have to disseminate information. I have to disseminate what goes on in my mind, what goes on in Wyatt's mind, Matthias, Benjamin Diggle's, so that everybody has all the tools they need to help us build. And so putting that out there is like, hey, does this make sense? Dude, every day I'm scared that there are people that know way more about technology than I do. They're better engineers, they're better business people, whatever it is. But we can all coalesce and kind of help each other put this thing together in a very fascinating way that I've never seen anything before. And so you do yourself a disservice by thinking that the power dynamic is company directing people versus it being a living organism. It's elastic. It comes in and pulls, just like the Constellation network. And that's how a lot of how we think about it is like, how do we treat our community like the network we're building, right? Yeah. And so like we think about all the features and things that go into the network, and you think about how that is projected in a real life scenario like Constellation.
And see, there's a couple of things there that I want to kind of extrapolate as well. When I kind of first got into kind of Constellation, I think it was the Moonwalker on Twitter, and that's how I I got to research about it. And then I looked at the community. I thought, this is a really kind of good community. And you were there, and I seen one of you. I seen that kind of rant you were talking about when you're having a glass of wine. That was one of the other things I looked at, and I thought, this is just such a cool community. But there's an honesty there. There's an authenticity there that you don't get with many projects as well. And it's that you can see there is a sense of community being built up. So much so that when I first looked at Constellation, I genuinely thought, okay, this is a good investment. I'm going to keep it for a while. But that's all it was. It was an investment. But then when I kind of joined the community, spoke to Berserker, spoke to the kind of Moonwalker and stuff like that, spoke to yourself, I thought, I want to be part of this community. What can I do to help this community? And I thought, I had an idea about, okay, people don't really understand big data. Could I understand it and disseminate that information, do videos on it? So I had a cool idea to do a whole series of videos. But then I realized, Christ, I'm part of this community. And I understand now why people get so kind of passionate about what you're doing, because I'm starting to feel that as well about Constellation. Speaking to you just now is all part of that as well. It's amazing.
I appreciate that. It's interesting. When we first started with our whole theory of how do we start building better trust? Like, we had this community that was just yelling at us. Like, we weren't talking to them. They're just like hating us. And we were losing members all the time. We were losing people across all channels. And we have like a great graph of like where our Twitter was. And we were like negative. It was really interesting. And so one of the things that we started just being more open. And I was like, this isn't me. So what? And so I kind of took over the community myself back in like February of last year. And, you know, I just kind of threw myself in there, and man, people would start attacking, but they really were just curious. They just wanted to be heard. You know, it's just like people, like adults do this. They get angry if somebody doesn't listen to them, or they aren't received or respected, right? Like, these are the cores of human connection that you see. And so I started building this trust. And when, you know, people started lashing at me like, oh, Ben's on Telegram too much, or Ben's too transparent, or he's too authentic, right? All things that we kind of think of joke. Like, somebody once said like, oh, real CEOs are like, would not kind of admit a lot of this stuff or be that vocal and vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I'm going to cut you off on information. If you really want that and you don't want access to information, I'm going to cut off. Number two, what CEOs do you hang out with? And this is not, you know, this isn't like, you know, running General Electric back in the 60s, or, you know, this isn't like this old, like, Mad Men mentality anymore. That's not what CEOs are. I mean, look at like what Tony Hsieh has done in creating an incredible horizontally structured culture at Zappos. If you don't know Zappos, they were acquired by Amazon. Tony Hsieh is one of my close friends that I've had for about 10 years. And I've learned a lot of how he builds these horizontal organizations. And he's very open. He's very available. He wants to equip people to be entrepreneurs themselves. And so when I did this, I took this take, and I was pissed off. Like, how dare somebody challenge my like strength because I'm open. And as a result, the swarm of a community was like, get that guy out of here. We like hearing what Ben's saying. He's giving us insight on their roadmap and giving us total transparency so that we can decide if we want to be a part of this.
Exactly.
And if you scare him out, then we lose access. And now this becomes like, now we're fearful every day. You know, oh my God, are they running? Are they exiting? Are they actually working over there? Like, is this even possible? And so it was kind of funny. That was the first kind of feedback loop around, okay, people want this and they'll protect their source of information. Right. And that was valuable. That was more valuable than, like, you know, the trading of the currency and how well it was doing. It was about protecting the source of information. And I think that's always fascinating. Like, how do we get our info, and how do we protect that? And seeing the community kind of bind on that, to me, it was really great, but it showed the appetite for learning, and the appetite to see a lot of our vision. So
that was brilliant. The thing with the community as well, and what you're talking about the community, especially with kind of Constellation and a couple of others, I was speaking to a couple of people from Taylor. They're starting to, well, they've done it already, kind of built up the community in a kind of same organic way, in an authentic and honest way as well. But when you get a community like that, they don't bother. It's not all about the price. It's not all about how much is DAG worth, how much is it going to be, when is it going to moon, when's it going to... Nobody bothers about that. It's just about the tech, it's about the community, it's about, okay, where do we go next? Because they have that trust and that faith in you as well. And that is rare. That is really rare in kind of projects as well.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, I've also seen the personalities of people that are in our group change as like a direct, just kind of having access to all this information,
Yeah.
right? So I'll give you kind of a little insight on how I've structured this, which is different. We structured our community in a following way that's based on how we disseminate information into the system.
Yeah.
And this isn't about like tricking people or manipulation. It's because if I tell people what a neural network is and we describe it, now you think about it, everybody goes, what's a neural network? Why is this being like you have to kind of break it out into pieces. And so I've done it in a way, I've done this in a way where I want people to understand the impact of everything we do and why we do it, because we do it all with such intention. It's very much like the restaurant that I built. The chef does everything with intention. Every person, every aspect, every ingredient is built with intention. Everything in our restaurant has intention. And same thing with this digital ecosystem that we're building. And so I have a core of 6 cabinet members, and these are, I call them the cabinet because think of it like our president has like a Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State and all these different people that sit in his cabinet. And there's like core like 6. There's a core 6 different cabinet members, and these individuals are like, they mentor me, I mentor them. It's that whole dynamic back and forth, and they all have different skill sets. And they've been selected based off of kind of that trust element from the ground up in the community, is that we just started engaging with each other. And in the early days, one of the individuals, I started telling them what was going on, like what was like, where our mind was thinking. And he's like, dude, I can't handle all this information. I don't know what to do. I just want to have fun and make memes. But yet, like, I'm not going to tell you who it is because that person's skill set are just astronomical. But this core cabinet that I work with, and Berserka is in that core cabinet, I give them insight and information so that they can help me disseminate the information. And then beyond that, we've got, I think we have about 12 admins that we call admins, but these aren't admins. This is like Congress and the Senate. They are the voice of the people. Like, they're in every different channel. They're learning about what goes on. And the first thing, and every other week I hold a call, one for the cabinet, one for the broader admins. And my first thing is like, how are people feeling? What's the sentiment? What do they want to know more of? What are they not happy with is just as much as what are they happy with? And what can we do a better job of like communicating like why we're doing the things that we're doing and what this technology means. And I know that the community doesn't, and so they provide that feedback loop, which is so valuable because, you know, I could keep running on like writing white papers that convey certain things, but those white papers that we produce are built with like so much intention, because it's like, okay, what are we missing in the community to help them get our technology? And how can we put that in our next partner announcement, our next white paper that we produce, our next blog or an AMA? And so I really treat, so this Congress and this cabinet, I treat like I'm their employee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see them as they're like working for me, unpaid or paid. Like, I'm working for them. Like, how do I equip you to be even smarter? What are we missing here? Because this is so big. And when people are just like, when mainnet or, you know, when moon, you kind of go, you miss that. And what happens? Well, you get this amazing, beautiful community that feels heard, represented, has access to leadership on this. And then we start to truly create that decentralized ecosystem that is built by the people and for the people. Like, and it's happening all before our eyes. Like, this isn't about myself or Wyatt or Matthias or Diggles or our engineers that are on this. This is about all of you and making something that you all want. I say when I go into like government meetings, I talk about data should be governed by people, not companies. They should be governed by people. And right now it's totally in reverse. And that ethos is the mix of technology and society and human connection coming together. And it's one of the most beautiful things. And you can clearly tell that I get really passionate about this.
Yeah.
Because I think it's the holy grail. This is the future of work. If we want to talk about how people can work remotely and use data and insights to create their own path of entrepreneurship, here it is, right? We're trying to build that ecosystem. And it's happening every day. We get closer and closer, and every turn. It's fun because I've learned a ton about myself as well throughout this, is that I love helping to connect people and connect the dots. And it's like, dude, run with it, build something that we can't even think of. And anybody that thinks that we're too small of a project or this or that, fuck off. This is about the community at this point. And our community and admins and cabinets, there's nobody that's lesser or greater. They have different skill sets and they come out. And it's really fascinating to see what comes to fruition and what comes to the forefront when you allow self-organizing to occur, when you allow decentralization. This is the right way to go. What do you guys think? And these are our proof points. And then it happens, and people build stuff without even me knowing, and it's beautiful. I don't know, it's just amazing to me. So I'll take a pause right there. I realize I went on a rant.
There's a lot of underlying things there. I don't even know if you realize it. Might be a subconscious thing, but there's a lot of underlying things there, like Constellation, this whole ethos, this kind of neural network that you're talking about as well. And each individual makes an impact on that network. So it's not just the network that's making an impact on the people, it's each individual making an impact on the network. And throughout what you've been talking about today, that comes across loud and clear. Every single individual in the community is just as important as everybody else in it. So you're not more important than kind of Berserker or your kind of cabinet, but every single individual has an important part to play in this community.
Absolutely, they 100%. Everybody does, and it's so fascinating. Even the naysayers, right? Like you can't see something as like positive without having a negative, right? But that brings to light certain things. Now, are they always valid negations? No, but it does help kind of provide that true feedback loop to help build situational awareness that occurs. To build that consciousness, if you will. And I treat the community like family. Crypto foes come to visit me. I had somebody else that lost, one of our community members lost a lot on another project, and his wife left him. And I picked up the phone on a Friday night and talked to him for 2 hours just to make sure they're doing all right. And because they were a very active person in our community, that human touch point with people, it's great to have that ability to kind of reach out to people. And like you said, there's nobody that's like above anybody else or more powerful. And that like plays into our reputation, our consensus mechanism, right? Is built on reputation. Right, there's like the subsequent batches of node operators were selected by the community. And you're starting to see these self-organizing initiatives like around the branding of the Stardust Collective, which is a self-organized group that builds educational materials on who Constellation is and what we're doing and the value of certain partnerships. That it's like, it's not just a remote marketing team. It's helping us articulate ourselves and this giant vision, but it also helps people in our community articulate them. Let them showcase their skill sets and their value. Let them come forward and be recognized. And you're going to see that like exponentially more as the year goes on. As we start spinning out new initiatives that I get really, really excited about. and on how do you create this network that's not just put on a node, participate passively, but how do you keep this organic creativity going? So it's fun to see that come to life when you can acknowledge people in a very technical company.
Yeah. And I guess underlying all that, and you've kind of alluded to this a couple of times, is the story. You kind of mentioned the story a couple of times. Why is that important? Why is the story important? And a lot of people might not get this about where's the story behind what is the story. Could you kind of just talk a wee bit about that? Because I know it's extremely important.
Yeah. One of my good friends, I'm not going to phrase him correctly, but he's raised over $480 million for
Wow.
venture-backed company, for his most recent venture-backed company. And he sold two prior companies, one to Intel, and he was an executive at EA. And one of the things he told me when like fundraising is that people invest into stories.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, the last company he was with was in the cannabis industry, and he was like, all these are the negatives about cannabis. You know, the government, once again, involved in it. They can shut it down. There's no clear path on marketing. You can say all these things, but if you tell the story and you relate to somebody, that's how you win hearts and minds over. And the same thing goes for building the restaurant. People respond to stories. We go to the movies and we see the same story over and over and over again, because it helps our minds connect the dots. And we know where those dots go, which make us feel comfortable or not comfortable, but it makes us feel right. Yeah. And we know what goes on, and we still have an insatiable appetite to go see that story, even though we've heard it told in myriads of different ways. So the value of the story is to connect with people, and the goal of everything is to connect. Because if you don't connect, then nobody can receive it and consume what you're trying to say. And there's so many smart people out there, and so many successful individuals that don't know how to tell that story and replicate their success or replicate their impact on people's lives. And so, you know, success is impacting other people's lives. And the way you do that, at least one way, is to share a story with them that they can relate to and that they can take and be a part of that story as well. And Constellation, I think, is very much that way. It's kind of a choose your own adventure. Do you want to partake in this great story? It's not my story. I had an impact on it. Wyatt had a massive impact on it. We all have. But then it's kind of up to the community to help kind of fill in the gaps. All right, here's the roadmap. Does everything make sense? What are the chapters made of? What are the paragraphs made of that explain the technology, that explain the story in a way that we can go, oh, this makes a lot of sense. I see where this is going. Or if they did this, this would have a huge impact. Like that's connecting those dots.
And I guess then kind of talk, just listening to you talking, that's obviously really important, but you as well, you, Wyatt, and the rest of the kind of team there as well, it's almost like you're kind of building like an Ethereum. It's not, I'm not saying the kind of platform, but whereby if the team wasn't there, it would still function. It would still work because of the community, because of what you built, and because of everybody else getting involved as well. Is that kind of how you see it as well? Yeah. So you don't want to be the figurehead, you don't want to be always on camera, because it is about the bigger picture.
No, I'm really glad you brought that up. And, you know, we've talked a little bit about how we're creating more decentralization each way. We're disseminating control, power, authority, directives. We are empowering people to do this and saying like, hey, look, I don't care what you like, do it, mess up, like, or do something great. I don't know. Like I'm always big on people going like, experiment with something, like find out if that works or not. Yeah. And so with Constellation, every step of the way that we're going are how do we make it so that we are just another node in the network? You know, we're not a master node because Constellation doesn't have master nodes. We are just another vote, another node, and we might help provide those rails at early times in the creation of Constellation, because everybody has jobs, everybody has you know, lives and families and their own personal dramas and their own personal successes. So right now it takes a full-time team to help kind of create the strategy, the guidance, but eventually, like, you know, as I said, we work for everybody else.
Yeah.
Our whole focus since the very beginning is how do we relinquish control to a community, and we're doing that. Our batch 0 are more technical individuals that can help maintain and build the network. And they will help onboard the other node operators, which make up our decentralized network. All the way down to governance. There's a governance board. It's an informal board, but it's self-organized individuals, about 25 individuals. They're politically savvy. They're political scientists. And they're very excited about things that are different than the Stardust Collective. They're excited about writing the values and rules by which we want to govern ourselves. How does a decentralized network govern itself? Yeah. This is something of utmost concern, but it's not for us to lay down a law. We can provide insights on what we want to do, but anything that, like, all of our initiatives are open. You want to jump into any of this, you can see the dynamic, you can see the dialogue that occurs and the intention that everybody has before just putting it into play. And so, like, even down to like the Stardust Collective, they're not only building educational materials. The way I see the Stardust Collective building itself is ultimately they will be responsible for funding new applications that are built on Constellation. Yeah. And I have some really fun things that I've got in the works right now with some other organizations that could help build that momentum around the idea of a datapreneur, right? We're entering this era where data is going to create the new application. How, you know, using artificial intelligence, validated data will create this whole new influx of applications. And the Stardust Collective can be responsible for kind of monitoring applications or interests, or even marketing directives by other companies. Hey, take that up with the Stardust Collective. They're going to tell you what is going to be impactful. And so ultimately, like, I see that they're going to be able to be a strong division of Constellation that is responsible for creating the next layer of applications that leverage validated data.
Listen, I know we're getting kind of over time here. I didn't realize, I just looked at the time and I thought, Christ, I've taken up a lot of your time here. So I'm going to ask you kind of one last question, Ben, because I really appreciate you taking the time out for this. What's your plan for the future with regards to the company and kind of with the community as well? So I know you've kind of spoken about kind of Constellation as well, but with regards to kind of Constellation in the future, where do you see it in the future with regards to the company and the community as a whole?
Yeah, I think there's a couple. So there's many, as we've talked, and as you point out, there's so many layers to Constellation.
Yeah.
There's the humanistic layer, the technological layer, the interconnected layer that adds a whole new value. And one of the things I take a lot of interest in, and that I would like to see, is that we have a new layer of accountability when it comes to data, where people can register their own identity and decide who and when and how much their data is worth, the cumulative insights. And this kind of melts itself around data privacy, is that, you know, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Amazons have all figured out how to take your data, glean insights, and sell you something. And what do you get out of this? A better recommendation of a product? Is that is that the fair value exchange these days? I would say no, because these multi-billion-dollar data breaches that continue to plague governments, private entities, and is it their fault for not creating new layers of accountability? Absolutely. Do they know how to? No. Our digital infrastructure was built 30 years ago. We had no idea billions of sensors would come online and produce all this data. And then we had no idea that there's going to be a whole new industry that's a $150 billion industry called artificial intelligence that would take all this data and power these engines and create new insights, new learnings, new automations. And so, nobody had that kind of complete vision. But we do owe it to individuals to go back and rethink how we audit and account for using somebody's data. And we think about the future of work, right? Like we think about how the gig economy and the Ubers out there have really kind of activated the abundance of cars that were sitting at home and say, hey, turn on this app and we're going to connect you to this other individual that wants to go across town, right? There's this, the whole expression, Uber's the largest transportation company. They don't own one car. And Airbnb is the largest hospitality company, but they don't own any land, right? And so we think of that layer as the first layer of how do you activate individuals and tap into this abundance of resources or unused working property, right? Like I'm out of town, I don't use my house. Somebody should be able to rent it, right? And I should be able to offset a lot of my expenses. The same thing is going to happen at the granular data level, is that we're all going to have control over our data. Maybe today you want to give Procter & Gamble some info so that Old Spice cologne can get more info on your spending habits and behavior. Or maybe an insurance company wants to underwrite your risk for a mortgage, for a car. And so all of that comes with this free exchange of validated data. But it should start with you, and that it should start with the individual. So, our community comes into play as they become the voice and the power to say, hey, it's not okay with what you're doing with my data, but I also have a solution.
Yeah.
And Constellation becomes not just the technology, but the ability to account for data at that granular level. Like the only way to create an accounting system of that magnitude is to have it decentralized. The only way. Because now you're talking about an entire distributed network with no one single point of vulnerability.
Yep.
And so I really am passionate to create a suite of products and solutions that allow people to regulate their own data privacy. And I've got some really fascinating ideas that I'm working with our community to build out. And so I see that as being like one of the main ethos that drives Constellation to the years forward. A lot of people see us as an enterprise company, but I see this as down to the retail consumer and anybody that has data and anybody that wants to actually start earning money for their insights, their connected tissues of data. And so that becomes a very dear part of what we're doing. And I want to see the next layer of applications built with taking data into consideration. So that's a lot of where I see this world going, that will be driven largely by our community because they are the voice, and also driven by the technology because we provide that infrastructure to account for this.
Ben, this has been totally fascinating. I know a lot of people might think, okay, why are they talking about community here when you've got Constellation, you've got the tech and everything else? But I think this really gives an insight into what Constellation's about, kind of underlying the subconscious of kind of Constellation, if you will, as well, what you're about as a person as well. So I think from that point of view, I think it's been a brilliant kind of interview, kind of talking to you. It's just been totally fascinating. And you can tell you're passionate about the community as well. That really comes across. So I really kind of do thank you. When I kind of first got into Constellation, I have to say, I was an investor. So I was an investor when I first got into Constellation, but now I feel I am part of the community now. So it's a totally different kind of mindset what I've got with Constellation. So I want to thank you for that as well, Ben.
Stephen, I can't thank you enough for your questions. I love your energy and I love your commitment to it all. And this has just been like the first time we talked. It just seems to really roll. And I love it that you're a part of our community. This is exactly what excites me about this every day, is because we are all becoming very, we're connecting over different things where maybe we never would have connected before.
Yeah.
And we're all creating something that we all have a chance to impact in so many different ways. So I can't thank you enough for even wanting to do this and expressing interest. And I'm glad that you stumbled upon Constellation. So it means a lot.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks again. I really appreciate your time. And no doubt, hopefully I can get to chat with you again about something kind of different as well and about Constellation going forward. So thanks again, Ben. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Stephen. I really appreciate your time, man.
All right, cheers, buddy.